Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! Sunlight bathed the bustling construction site in a golden haze, each beam reflecting off the metal structures, creating an otherworldly ambiance amidst the chaos. The industrial dance played out its final tune as the day drew to a close, with workers in their protective armor, hard hats, and neon vests, darting like fireflies against the fading light. At the heart of this mechanical orchestra stood a solitary figure, a beacon of dedication and labor, easily distinguishable by his mud-laden workwear and auburn locks framing his rugged face. With the ease of an artist painting his masterpiece, Connor maneuvered the heavy machinery, his practiced movements belying the weariness that etched lines across his forehead. The dirt and sweat, companions to his labor, told a tale of perseverance and unyielding commitment. As the sun surrendered to the horizon, marking the end of another arduous chapter, he paused, sensing a familiar ache in his heart, a silent yearning for something beyond the shadows of steel and concrete. The lively invitation to join for refreshments interrupted the symphony of his thoughts. With a gracious yet reluctant decline, he flashed a fleeting smile to his colleagues, his eyes hinting at stories untold, waiting to be discovered beyond the boundaries of this workman's world. "Not tonight, boys. Got some errands to run." The truth was, he had somewhere else to be, somewhere that made his heart race with equal parts excitement and trepidation. As he climbed into his weathered pickup truck, Michael's mind wandered to the package that awaited him at home. He'd ordered it on a whim, late one night when the loneliness felt suffocating and the whiskey wasn't quite doing its job. Now it sat in his living room, unopened, like a time bomb waiting to explode. The drive home felt longer than usual, each traffic light an eternity. By the time Michael pulled into his driveway, his palms were slick with sweat. He fumbled with his keys, nearly dropping them in his haste to get inside. There it was. The plain brown box sat innocently on his coffee table, betraying nothing of its contents. Michael approached it slowly, as if it might bite. With trembling hands, he tore open the packaging. A sea of pink spilled out onto his calloused fingers. The fabric was softer than anything he'd ever touched, a stark contrast to the rough materials he worked with daily. Michael lifted the dress, holding it up to the light. It was beautiful, delicate and feminine in a way that made his throat tighten. Before he could talk himself out of it, Michael stripped off his work clothes. The cool air hit his skin, raising goosebumps along his arms. He took a deep breath and slipped the dress over his head. The transformation was instant. The soft material caressed his skin, settling around his body in a way that felt utterly foreign, yet inexplicably right. Michael turned to face the mirror, his breath catching in his throat. The person staring back at him was different, softer somehow, despite the strong jaw and broad shoulders. The pink dress hugged his waist, flaring out at the hips in a way that created the illusion of curves. His auburn hair, usually hidden beneath a hard hat, fell in messy waves around his face. For the first time in years, Michael felt seen. Not as the rough-and-tumble construction worker, but as the person he'd always known existed beneath the surface. A person who loved the feel of silk against their skin and dreamed of twirling in flowy skirts.
"Michelle,"
he whispered, testing the name on his tongue. It felt right, like coming home after a long journey. That night, Michelle, slept in the dress, afraid that if she took it off, the magic would disappear. When morning came, she reluctantly changed back into her work clothes, but the memory of pink fabric and newfound freedom lingered. Days turned into weeks, and Michelle's secret world grew. She ordered more dresses, experimented with makeup, and even bought a wig that matched her natural auburn color but fell in long, feminine waves. Each night, she'd transform, shedding Michael like an ill-fitting skin. At work, she threw herself into her tasks with renewed vigor, channeling her frustration into productivity. Her coworkers noticed the change, commenting on her improved mood and efficiency. Little did they know that the source of her newfound energy came from the promise of silk and lace waiting for her at home. As months passed, the line between Michael and Michelle began to blur. She found herself incorporating subtle feminine touches into her daily life. A hint of clear nail polish, a softer body wash, delicate undergarments beneath her work clothes. Each small change was a victory, a step closer to becoming her true self. One evening, as Michelle stood in front of her mirror, adjusting the strap of a lavender sundress, she made a decision. It was time to stop living a double life. She deserved to be her authentic self, both in the privacy of her home and out in the world. The next day, she scheduled an appointment with a therapist who specialized in gender identity issues. It was terrifying, laying bare her deepest secrets to a stranger, but also liberating. For the first time, Michelle felt seen and understood. With the therapist's guidance, Michelle began the process of transitioning. She started hormone therapy, watching in awe as her body slowly began to change. Subtle curves appeared, her skin softened, and her facial features became more delicate. Each change was a small miracle, bringing her outer appearance closer to the woman she'd always been inside. Telling her coworkers was one of the hardest things Michelle had ever done. She stood before them, hands trembling but voice steady, as she explained her journey. To her surprise and relief, most were supportive. There were a few uncomfortable silences and awkward questions, but overall, her team rallied around her.
"You're still the best damn worker we've got,"
her foreman said gruffly, clapping her on the shoulder.
"Don't matter what you wear or what you call yourself."
Those words meant more to Michelle than she could express. She continued working construction, proving that being a woman didn't make her any less capable of handling power tools or heavy machinery. If anything, she worked harder, determined to show that femininity and strength were not mutually exclusive. As her confidence grew, so did her passion for fashion. Michelle found herself sketching dress designs during her lunch breaks, imagining flowing fabrics and intricate patterns. She enrolled in night classes at the local community college, studying fashion design and pattern making. Her unique perspective, a blend of practical construction knowledge and a deep appreciation for feminine aesthetics, set her designs apart. She created dresses that were both beautiful and functional, with hidden pockets and reinforced seams that could withstand the rigors of daily life. One day, as Michelle was welding a steel beam, an idea struck her. She rushed home after work, barely taking time to change out of her protective gear before sitting down at her sewing machine. Hours flew by as she worked, fueled by inspiration and instant coffee. The result was a dress unlike anything she'd created before. It combined the sturdy materials of her construction world with the delicate lines of high fashion. The bodice was made from a soft, flowing fabric in a warm shade of pink, while the skirt incorporated elements that resembled scaffolding and support beams. It was a perfect representation of Michelle herself, a fusion of strength and femininity. Excited by her creation, Michelle entered it in a local fashion contest. To her shock and delight, she won first place. The judges praised her innovative design and unique perspective, urging her to pursue fashion full-time. It was a turning point. Michelle realized that she could combine her two passions, construction and fashion, into something truly special. She began designing a line of workwear for women in traditionally male-dominated fields. Her dresses and jumpsuits were stylish yet practical, allowing women to feel feminine without sacrificing functionality. As her designs gained popularity, Michelle made the difficult decision to leave her construction job. It was bittersweet, saying goodbye to the world that had shaped her for so long. But she knew it was time to build something new. She converted her garage into a workshop, filling it with both sewing machines and power tools. It became her sanctuary, a place where she could create beautiful garments while still keeping her hands busy with the occasional furniture project. Michelle's business grew rapidly. Women in construction, engineering, and other male-dominated fields flocked to her designs, appreciating clothes that allowed them to express their femininity without compromising their professional image. She began receiving invitations to fashion shows and industry events, her unique background making her a sought-after voice in the fashion world. Through it all, Michelle never forgot her roots. She made it a point to hire other transgender individuals, providing them with opportunities and a supportive work environment. Her workshop became known as a safe space for those exploring their gender identity, a place where strength and softness could coexist. One sunny afternoon, as Michelle stood in her workshop, surrounded by bolts of fabric and the comforting hum of machinery, she caught a glimpse of herself in a mirror. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a messy bun, a few strands escaping to frame her face. She wore one of her own designs, a pink dress with subtle structural elements that hinted at her past life. In that moment, Michelle felt a sense of completeness she'd never experienced before. She was no longer hiding, no longer pretending to be someone she wasn't. She was simply herself, a woman who could wield a welding torch as easily as a sewing needle, who found beauty in both skyscrapers and silk. As she turned back to her work, Michelle smiled. She picked up a piece of pink fabric in one hand and a power drill in the other, ready to create something beautiful. This was who she was meant to be, a perfect blend of Michael's strength and Michelle's grace, forging a path uniquely her own. The fashion industry took notice of Michelle's revolutionary designs. Her workwear line expanded to include options for various professions, from firefighters to mechanics. Each piece was a testament to her belief that one shouldn't have to choose between femininity and practicality. Michelle's fame grew, and she found herself invited to speak at conferences and events. She shared her story openly, hoping to inspire others who might be struggling with their identity. Her journey from construction worker to fashion designer resonated with many, and she became an unwitting role model for the transgender community. Despite her success, Michelle never lost touch with her roots. She maintained friendships with her former construction colleagues, often inviting them to fashion shows where they stood out in their work boots and flannel shirts. She loved the juxtaposition of these two worlds colliding, a visual representation of her own journey. One day, as Michelle was sketching a new design, she received a call from a major fashion magazine. They wanted to feature her in their next issue, focusing on trailblazers in the industry. The photo shoot was scheduled for the following week, and Michelle found herself both excited and nervous. When the day arrived, Michelle stood in her workshop, surrounded by the tools of both her past and present. The photographer wanted to capture the essence of her journey, so they'd decided to shoot on location. Michelle wore one of her own creations, a stunning pink gown that incorporated elements of industrial design. The bodice was structured like the support beams of a building, while the skirt flowed like liquid metal. Her auburn hair was styled in soft waves, framing her face perfectly. As the camera clicked away, Michelle posed with various tools. A sewing machine in one shot, a power drill in another. Each image told a story of transformation and self-discovery. In one particularly powerful shot, she stood at her workbench, a half-finished dress on one side and a pile of lumber on the other, perfectly embodying the duality of her experience. The article, when published, was a sensation. Michelle's story inspired countless individuals struggling with their own identities. She received letters from people all over the world, thanking her for showing that it was possible to be true to oneself while still honoring one's past. Encouraged by the response, Michelle decided to take her message further. She began working on a book, chronicling her journey from Michael to Michelle. It was a deeply personal project, forcing her to confront memories both painful and joyous. She wrote about the first time she tried on a dress, the challenges of transitioning while working in a male-dominated field, and the freedom she found in finally embracing her true self. As she wrote, Michelle realized how far she'd come. She thought back to that first pink dress, hidden away in a plain brown box, and marveled at the changes it had set in motion. Now, she stood proudly in the spotlight, a successful businesswoman and designer who had found a way to merge all aspects of herself into a cohesive whole. The book launch was held at a venue that perfectly represented Michelle's journey, a converted warehouse that now served as an art gallery. The industrial bones of the building were still visible, but they were softened by delicate lighting and flowing fabrics. It was a visual metaphor for Michelle herself. She stood at the podium, resplendent in a pink dress of her own design, her auburn hair gleaming under the lights. As she looked out at the crowd, a mix of fashion industry elite, former construction colleagues, and members of the LGBTQ+ community, Michelle felt a surge of gratitude. "Thank you all for being here tonight," she began, her voice strong and clear. "This book is more than just my story. It's a testament to the power of authenticity, to the beauty that can emerge when we have the courage to be true to ourselves." As she spoke, Michelle's eyes fell on a familiar face in the crowd. It was her old foreman, looking slightly uncomfortable in a suit, but beaming with pride. Their eyes met, and he gave her a subtle nod of approval. In that moment, Michelle felt the last pieces of her journey fall into place. She had bridged the gap between her past and present, creating a future that honored all parts of herself. The applause was thunderous as Michelle concluded her speech. As she stepped down from the podium, she was enveloped in a sea of well-wishers. Amidst the chaos, she caught a glimpse of herself in a nearby mirror. The woman who looked back at her was confident, successful, and above all, authentic. Michelle smiled, running her hand over the soft pink fabric of her dress. She had come so far from that first nervous purchase, yet in many ways, she was still the same person, someone who appreciated both the strength of steel and the delicacy of silk. She had found a way to be true to all aspects of herself, creating a life that was as multifaceted and beautiful as the designs she created. As the night wore on, Michelle mingled with her guests, sharing stories and laughter. She felt a profound sense of peace, knowing that she had not only found her true self, but had also created a space for others to do the same. Her journey from Michael to Michelle had been long and sometimes difficult, but standing there, surrounded by love and acceptance, she knew it had been worth every step. The success of her book opened up new opportunities for Michelle. She was invited to speak at universities and conferences, sharing her story and inspiring others to embrace their authentic selves. Her fashion line continued to grow, expanding to include not just workwear, but also evening gowns and casual wear, all infused with her unique blend of femininity and structural elements. One day, as Michelle was preparing for a major fashion show, she received an unexpected call. It was from a construction company she had never worked with, but they had heard her story and were impressed by her journey. They wanted to collaborate on a project, a new community center that would serve as a safe space for LGBTQ+ youth. The idea excited Michelle. It was a chance to bring her two worlds together in a tangible way. She agreed to design the building, incorporating elements of her fashion aesthetic into the architecture. The project became a labor of love, with Michelle pouring all of her skills and experiences into creating a space that was both beautiful and functional. As the building took shape, Michelle found herself spending more time on the construction site. She donned a hard hat and work boots once again, but this time over one of her own designs, a chic pink workwear jumpsuit that turned heads and proved that style and safety could go hand in hand. The day of the community center's grand opening arrived, and Michelle stood before the crowd, ready to cut the ribbon. She wore a stunning pink gown that echoed the building's design. Strong, structural lines, softened by flowing fabric. Her auburn hair was styled in an elegant updo, a nod to the polished businesswoman she had become. As she looked out at the faces before her, construction workers, fashion industry professionals, members of the LGBTQ+ community, and curious onlookers, Michelle felt a sense of completion. She had come full circle, bringing together all the parts of herself in a way she never thought possible. "This building," she said, her voice carrying across the crowd, "is more than just bricks and mortar. It's a symbol of transformation, of the beauty that can emerge when we have the courage to be our true selves. Just as I found a way to blend my love for construction with my passion for fashion, this center represents the possibility of creating spaces where all aspects of ourselves are welcome." With those words, Michelle cut the ribbon, officially opening the center. As cheers erupted around her, she felt a tap on her shoulder. Turning, she found herself face to face with a young person, their eyes shining with a mix of admiration and hope. "Thank you," they said softly. "Your story, it gave me the courage to be myself." Michelle's heart swelled with emotion. This, she realized, was the true measure of her success, not the fashion empire she had built or the accolades she had received, but the lives she had touched along the way. As the day wound down, Michelle found a quiet moment to herself. She stood in the center's main hall, running her hand along the wall. The building was a perfect blend of strength and beauty, much like Michelle herself. It was a testament to how far she had come, from a construction worker hiding a pink dress to a woman who had found a way to embrace all aspects of herself. Michelle smiled, smoothing down her pink gown. She was no longer hiding, no longer pretending. She was simply herself, a woman who could appreciate both the rough texture of concrete and the soft flow of silk, who could wield a welding torch as confidently as she could thread a needle. And in being true to herself, she had created something beautiful, not just in fashion or architecture, but in the lives she had touched along the way. As she turned to rejoin the celebration, Michelle felt a sense of peace wash over her. Her journey had been long and sometimes difficult, but standing there, in a building that represented the merging of all parts of herself, she knew it had been worth every step. She was Michelle, designer, builder, and above all, a woman comfortable in her own skin. And that, she realized, was the most beautiful design of all.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!